Imagine living where you never know if your neighbor is friendly or reporting you. That was the KGB's real power, turning ordinary life into a trap you can't see. It starts small, a look that lasts a second too long, a stairwell that suddenly feels tighter, a phone call where the line clicks, and you swear you hear breathing. You tell yourself you're being dramatic, and then you remember the only rule that matters in a place like this. If you feel watched, you'll behave like you are watched. The KGB, the Committee for State Security, was officially created in 1954, but it didn't appear out of nowhere. It inherited a long Soviet secret police tradition from earlier agencies. Different names, same shadow. The point wasn't just catching criminals. The point was controlling uncertainty until fear became a daily routine. And tonight, we're stepping into that shadow world, not as tourists, but like someone who has to survive it. Because the KGB didn't just hunt spies, it built rules that made ordinary people whisper in their own kitchens. Rules that made friendships feel like loaded weapons. Rules that didn't just police your actions, but rewired your mind. So let's lay out those rules. Simple, real, and honestly, still echoing in the way power can move when no one's looking. Rule number 1. Someone is always building your story. KGB loved what every control system loves: paper, reports, notes, names, addresses, workplace rumors, a comment you made at a party, a friend you met twice. The power wasn't just in collecting it. It was in the fact you didn't know what had been written about you. Think of it like this. Your life is a movie, and someone else owns the script. Because once a file exists, it can outlive you. It can be reopened years later. It can be updated by someone who doesn't like you. And when you can't see what's inside the file, you start living cautiously, just in case. And that opens the next question. If the files are the weapon, how do you feed them constantly? Rule number 2. The KGB didn't need microphones. It had people. A worldwide web of informants and pressured cooperators helped create that constant flow. Some people reported out of belief, some for reward, some because they were trapped by fear, blackmail, or the simple need to protect their job, their family, their future. And here's what makes it so brutal. The system didn't require everyone to be an informant. It only required you to believe that anyone could be. So you start editing yourself. You stop finishing sentences. You stop telling jokes. You stop asking questions that feel too curious. You shrink your thoughts before they ever leave your mouth. That's the KGB's quiet genius. It turns the population into a self-policing machine. And the scariest part, you don't even feel the bars at first. You just feel careful. But informants are human, messy, emotional, unreliable. So the KGB built the next layer. Rule 3. Surveillance isn't a moment, it's a rhythm. Tails, observation posts, monitoring phone lines, checking mail, tracking routines. The goal wasn't always to catch you doing something dramatic. It was to map your pattern, because patterns reveal relationships, networks, influence. And when surveillance is done right, it doesn't just gather information, it creates pressure. Because the target never knows if they're being watched today, or if they were watched yesterday, or if someone is watching them right now through a window they forgot existed. It's like living with a shadow that sometimes disappears, just long enough for you to think you're safe, then returns the moment you exhale. And the longer it goes on, the more you start doing something dangerous. You start doubting your own instincts. And that doubt is a doorway, because once the KGB could control your confidence, it could control your choices. Now, here's where most people think the story stays inside the USSR. But the KGB's shadow didn't stop at the border. It traveled quietly. Rule number 4. Abroad, it played chess. Foreign intelligence operations were a major focus, recruiting sources, stealing secrets, running agents. using tradecraft built on patience. Dead drops, coded signals, quick handoffs in crowds. Kind of work where the biggest victory looks like nothing happened at all. And at the deepest level were illegals, officers living under false identities, blending in as ordinary citizens in a foreign country, sometimes for years. No embassy badge, no obvious connection, just a normal face with an abnormal mission. Analogy: if your ordinary spying is a burglary, illegals are someone moving into the neighborhood and quietly becoming part of your life until they can open doors you didn't even know existed. Then there's the shadow technique that doesn't just steal secrets, it steals trust, active measures, influence operations, deception, propaganda efforts designed to confuse, divide, and weaken opponents. Sometimes it wasn't about making people believe one lie. It was about making people doubt everything. Because when people doubt everything, they stop resisting anything. But here's the curiosity hook. If the KGB had all these tools, files, informants, surveillance, foreign chess, what made the fear so personal, so intimate? That brings us to the rule people remember in their bones. Rule number 5. Fear doesn't have to be loud. It only has to be possible. Sometimes punishment looked like arrest and interrogation. Sometimes it was harassment. Sometimes it was professional ruin, lost jobs, blocked promotions, travel denied, doors quietly closing. For dissidents, the state could use any pressure in many forms, including intimidation and, in documented cases, psychiatric abuse, ways to break a person without a public spectacle. And the most powerful part wasn't the punishment itself, it was the unpredictability. If consequences are predictable, people learn how to avoid them. If consequences feel random, people obey early, preemptively. They silence themselves before the state even speaks. And that's the moment the shadow world clicks into focus. KGB didn't need to be everywhere. It just needed you to imagine it was everywhere. That's the aha. A file you can't see, a watcher you can't confirm, a rumor you can't disprove, a consequence that might happen or might not. So you live like it already did. You become your own guard. That's why the system worked. Not because agents were superhuman, but because it trained millions of people to do the work themselves. The KGB didn't only police streets, it policed speech, it policed silence, it policed what you almost said. And here's the part that lands hardest. This isn't just a history story, it's a warning written in human behavior. Because the method, turn uncertainty into obedience, doesn't vanish. It changes shape. It updates, it finds new corners to hide in. So if you're asking, what were the rules of fear? They were never complicated. Build the file, build the web, track the rhythm, play the long game, make consequences possible. Then let the mind do the rest. Because when fear becomes routine, history doesn't disappear. It waits, it lingers, it returns in new forms. It follows you like a shadow you can't quite prove is there. And if the KGB's world teaches anything, it's this. History never dies. It just echoes. Subscribe.